Welcome to another chat with Tim. I want to talk today about another popular kind of buzzword within the recovery world, and it's empathy. But like most buzzwords, two things tend to happen. It begins to develop kind of cultural definitions that aren't necessarily accurate. Everybody thinks they know what it means, but they don't really get it, and they start to get the wrong definition. And that can be dangerous. Secondly, it often gets weaponized. It now is something that is used against you. And so I want to do two little talks on this. The first, just to kind of explain, clarify what empathy is and isn't. And then some of the ways that people try to be empathetic, but they really miss being empathetic. So empathy misses. So let's begin with kind of the cultural understanding is you put yourself in somebody else's shoes and you feel what they feel. And that's kind of the empathy. There's a part of that that is very true, but it's bigger than that. That's open to misunderstanding. So to help us understand it, let me break it into three components that make up true empathy. So the first is there's an intellectual component, and that is you're able to understand what the other person is thinking and feeling. Doesn't necessarily mean you agree with it, doesn't necessarily mean that you're okay with it, but you understand it, you get it, you get them, you get why they're thinking and feeling the way they are. So you're able to say, yeah, I can see why you feel that way. And so some people think of it as terms of you kind of put yourself in a mental picture where you put yourself into their world, into their shoes, see the world through their eyes. Then there's a emotional component. So you're able to feel what they're feeling. And so this is very much a natural thing if we're in a healthy place where we automatically mirror the neurons that another person are firing. We mirror their emotional state. So if they're happy, we're happy. If they're sad, we're sad. That's part of what is happening here. So we're being affected by connecting to understanding and feeling the emotions that they're feeling. Then there's a third state, and that's called the compassionate empathy component, and that's now an action state. So I'm not just understanding and feeling, I'm now moving to support the person, to help. I desire to be there in some way to help them through this difficult response. And so it's very much now there's a care-giving element to my response. Now, to help us really understand this even further, I need to take you back to our three vagal states and show you what empathy looks like in the three vagal states. So in your ventral vagal state, that's the desired state. That's where you're connected, you're safe, and so you're able to feel all your emotions. All of your brain is functioning. That's where we want to be. So in that state is the only state where empathy can truly happen. That's what I want you to understand, because that's the only state where you truly connect with the other person. And since all of your emotions are available and your brain is functioning fully, you're able to accurately read their emotions. You pick up on their facial cues, their tone of voice, their body language. You're able to feel what they're feeling, but not get drawn in and overwhelmed by it. You're able to stay curious and explore what they're feeling without getting defensive. You can hold multiple perspectives at once. You can see what they're seeing, but you can see other perspectives. And you're able to hold safe space for them in that connected place. So this is the desired place. This is the only place where empathy, true empathy, can take place. Now, in the other states, you can look like you're being empathetic, but something's missing. It's not fully true empathy. And why I want to emphasize this is because I think most people, when they try to show empathy, are in their sympathetic vagal state or their dorsal vagal state. And so they think they're being empathetic, but the other person's not feeling it. So in the sympathetic vagal state, that's when your stress system's activated, you feel in danger, and now you're into fight, flight. And that's where most people live, in survival mode. That's their common state. And so that's why I say that's where a lot of people who are living in survival mode, stressed out, feeling overwhelmed, still are trying to be empathetic, but they're not able, because now in that state, your brain's not fully functioning. You're starting to shut down things. And so now you misread others. And because you're in survival mode, you misread them as dangerous, as threats, as trying to take advantage of you, of using you. And so you listen more selectively. You don't listen and hear exactly what they're saying. You hear it through the lens of danger. And so now you try to show empathy, but it's just kind of cognitive empathy, talking down to them. You're not really there for them. And then often, if you get too triggered by their emotions, then you react and you can lash out and get angry at them. And so the key thing to me with that is, when you're in sympathetic state, you don't connect. You break connection, because that's what you need to survive. And so you can't have true empathy without true connection. But so now what you do is, I'm going to run in and try to fix this person, or I'm going to cut them off, give them advice, talk to them, talk down to them, patronize them. And so empathy, you're still trying to give it, but it's very different. And the other person doesn't feel heard, doesn't feel seen. They don't feel that you really care. All you want to do is fix them so that you feel better. Very, very different. And then there's the dorsal vagal state, and that's kind of the next stage when fight and flight haven't worked. The sympathetic vagal hasn't worked. You then go to the dorsal vagal, which is the freeze. Let's shut down. It's hopeless. Everybody's against me. I'm helpless. I can't do anything about it. And so in this state, as you're shutting down, you have difficulty feeling and accessing emotions, both your own and others, because you're shutting that down. And so you feel very detached, indifferent. You find it hard to track conversation, to be emotionally invested. You are not connected emotionally to anybody. You're not connected to yourself. And so part of what's happening is, you're thinking, I know I should care, but I just can't get myself to care. I don't feel any emotions. And so you're thinking, you're just kind of foggy. You're not hearing everything. You're just numb, flat. And so what begins to happen is, it's not that you lack empathy. It's just that your system isn't available to give you the energy to have empathy, because you're shutting down. And so you might sit there and kind of look like you're half listening, but the other person is feeling like they're boring you, like you don't care about their problem. And so it's a total empathy miss. So it's really, really important to understand that empathy, true empathy, only takes place when I am connected and safe in my ventrovagal system. And sadly, many people aren't there very often. And so they're hearing all this terminology about being empathetic and showing empathy, and they're trying from their sympathetic vagal state or their dorsal vagal state, and it's not landing properly. It's not working. The other person feels invalidated. The other person feels not cared for and feels actually hurt by it. Let me go to the next thing, which is some common misunderstandings then that have developed as this word empathy has become a buzzword. And often it's people who are in their sympathetic vagal state in fight or flight who are trying to use empathy. And so they've developed what that looks like for them, but it's not true empathy. The first one is that if you have true empathy for another person, that you must agree with their perspective. You must agree with them. But understand that empathy is about understanding what the other person thinks. It's not about agreeing with what they think, but it's being able to really understand it. So I can see why you feel that way or see things that way. I'm not saying you're right, but I can get it. I understand it. So as soon as you confuse empathy with agreement, you can see there's going to be problems, because now I'm going to avoid conflict with you, because now if I'm empathetic, I just have to agree with everything you say. I never challenge you, and there's no conflict. And it can become almost a form of fawning, where I'm just going to agree. That way you like me. That way you're going to be happier, and it can become quite unhealthy. The next thing is, so it's not just that I agree with you, it's I must feel what you're feeling. Now, this is important to make some key distinctions. So the danger is to think I must match your emotions. So if you're sad, I must be sad too. And so it's not just that you understand their feelings, but that you experience their feelings as your own. So it's emotional contagion. It's not healthy empathy. Whereas healthy empathy, I understand your feelings, doesn't mean I'm going to take those on. It doesn't mean I'm going to experience them myself. And as if they're contagious. But this misunderstanding is I need to feel exactly what you're feeling. So understand that true empathy, I can stay separate from your emotions even though I understand them. And I can regulate my own emotions, even though you might not be regulated. So you feel with someone, not as them. That is so important. So if you don't have this distinction and you just think empathy is I take on your emotions, I feel all your emotions, and I feel them profoundly, then it's going to lead to burning out, or I got to avoid your emotions because as soon as I try to be empathetic, I get overwhelmed by them and it messes me up. So you don't know how to have that healthy, I'm connected, but I can stay separated because you're a separate individual. And that takes a lot of skill, but it is so important. The third is tied into that. It's almost like empathy becomes a competition. So yeah, you have empathy, but I have more empathy. And so more empathy is always better. So you feel their emotions and understand their emotions to a degree, but man, I ain't going to really feel, then I'm more empathetic than you. But boy, that leads to burnout, people pleasing, losing yourself. So understand that healthy empathy needs boundaries. It needs discernment. So the goal isn't more empathy. The goal is regulated empathy. Then the next one for many in that sympathetic vagal state is empathy means I got to fix your problem. So empathy isn't about being present, making space for you that's safe, getting you, understanding you. Empathy is about fixing you. So I'm not truly hearing you. I'm not truly understanding you. I'm just jumping at what I think are the issues and trying to fix it. And I want to jump to the solution and not really validate the pain or understand it. And that is so common. And often people do that because in that sympathetic state, they're interested in fixing your pains so that they have less pain. It's really about their own discomfort, not about yours. Another one is that empathy means that I'm always nice and always soft. And there's an element of empathy that is very warm, very soft, very gentle, very tender. But sometimes empathy can say, you know what, I care about you, but I can't agree with you and say yes to what you're wanting me to do. I understand what you're feeling, but it's not okay for you to be responding the way you're responding. So sometimes empathy has a bit of what feels like a harder edge to it, where it stands up to the other person because the other person is wanting to take their pain in a wrong direction. It wants to take their pain as an excuse to be a victim, as an excuse to self-soothe in unhealthy ways, as an excuse to be hurtful to others. And so empathy doesn't just condone whatever they have. It sometimes has to say, okay, there's limits to what I'm going to agree to what you're doing and boundaries, but I want you to think about what you're doing, that you're going to hurt yourself. And so the person giving empathy isn't always going to be popular, isn't always going to be, oh, thank you so much, I adore you, you're so considerate and understanding. Sometimes they're going to be the person that, I don't really like you because I don't like what you're saying to me. So just to wrap this up, this cultural definition that I need to feel exactly what you're feeling and agree with you totally, is it mixes empathy with emotional contagion, and that's dangerous. It assumes that you have to feel all of their emotions to prove that you care. So it leads to this over-identification. And that basically can destroy the benefits of empathy, because now it affects how you read it, because now you're reading it through your story, your emotions, your lens. And now you're not reading it as accurately as you should, because it's more about what your experience has been than about what they're experiencing. So I just hope this helps you begin to clarify in your mind what empathy is and what it isn't. And when you are actually in a good place where you're able to give true empathy, and when you're in a place where you're going to have a miss when you try to give empathy. And we'll talk about that next time.